Hello, welcome to my little trip down road testing memory lane. Q&A video for you today. Thanks for all your questions, comments, and Suzuki GSX-R750 love. It's good to hear from everybody. I've been on my travels. Well, I've come back from my riding holiday with my girlfriend, where we went to southern Italy. The last Q&A, I was sitting in the salubrious surroundings of Scilla in southern Italy, and very nice it was too. We ended up doing about 3,800 miles in 2 weeks on the Multistrada V2 S2 Up. So you can read all about what that trip was like in MCN soon. I've been doing loads and loads of testing since I've come back. In the UK, I've written them down. I've written a load of bikes. The Bimota KB998 Superbike, and you can see the first ride video and read all about that in MCN right now. The BMW S1000RR, Ducati Panigale V4 S, Honda CBR 1000RR R5 Blade SP, and then from the sublime to the ridiculous, a BSA Scrambler, Triumph's Scrambler 900, and a Royal Enfield Bear. Quite eclectic, but that's what we like. You can read all about that in MCN soon. And for the Nevesy Bikes channel, I've ridden a couple of very special bikes which you can see over the coming weeks, belonging to Roger Tillotson and Rob Nesbitt. So two bikes, well, one bike that I've always wanted to ride and one bike that I've ridden before, which is just proper special. So yeah, they'll be around very soon. And then next week I'm going to be doing the first major bike launch 2026, when I fly off to Spain, to Seville, to ride the new KTM 990 RCR. So that should be good fun, riding it on the road and the track. So it'd be interesting to see what the bike's like. It'd be interesting to see where KTM are and everything in between. So without further ado, let's crack on with some questiones. The first one is from GSX-R1378. Wonder what you've got. Hi Nevesy, awesome video, very jealous of your ride. So a lot of these comments are talking about the GSX-R750 video where I took it to Spa. Probably one of my best riding experiences of the year, if I'm honest. My question is, my bike has Bridgestone S22s on. These tyres were advertised as being within a few seconds in the wet conditions compared with dry conditions. My brain won't let this compute. Can you explain more about wet riding on track on road tyres, please? I'd love to turn up on a wet track day and have more confidence. Thanks, Chris. Well, thanks for asking. Bridgestone S22s, really good all-round sports tyre, really good in the dry, on track, and in the wet as well. I wouldn't say, I don't know where you've seen it advertised, that those tyres are within a few seconds of in the wet as they would be in the dry, because it very much depends on conditions. I mean, if you're talking kind of racing, then generally a lap time is around about 10 seconds slower in the wet than it would be in the dry. Some tracks are really grippy, and that time difference is reduced. In the UK at least, places like Pembury, there's only a few seconds in it. Thruxton is a really grippy track in the wet as well. But generally there's a much bigger gap between wet and dry times. You know, for all the obvious reasons, you're just not going to get the grip and the confidence, and more importantly, the heat in the tyre in the wet as you would do in the dry. And for sports tyres that need heat in them, it's very difficult to generate heat into sports tyres. So, you know, that's one of the big problems. It's less about kind of the tread and getting rid of the water. It's getting them to warm up. And then once they warm up, then they start steering properly. They give you confidence and grip and everything in between. So taking road tyres on a wet track day is something that you can do. When we were at the Haslam school, all we used was wet weather tyres, or sorry, sports touring tyres, which are road tyres. and they were brilliant in wet and dry, which just goes to prove you can kind of have your cake and eat it there. You still have to be quite careful with Bridgestone S22s, because they're kind of a rung higher than the sports touring tyres we used to use at the school. They need more heat in them to work, so kind of a wet track day in the summer, they're going to work better than a wet track day in the winter. It's a difficult one. If it rained on a track day and I was on road tyres, unless I was really desperate to get out there, I probably wouldn't go out anyway, because you know, you are on a knife edge in the wet. There is no kind of real warning when you're going to have a slide in the wet. It's either gripping or it's not. There's no kind of grey area that you get in the dry. But you can still have fun, and there's a lot of things you can do to kind of mitigate any kind of dangers that you're going to encounter. So first thing is, with regard to tyre pressures, you don't need to let a wet weather tyre or a tyre in the wet right down like you would do in the dry, because again, it's not going to generate the same kind of heat. So you barely need to let them down at all, perhaps a tad. But you'd need to have a look at the manufacturer's official tyre pressures for that. But I don't think many actually give wet pressures unless it's a proper wet racing tyre. You've also got to be careful not to let them down too much, because then the grooves close up, and then you don't want the grooves to close up because they can't get rid of the water, which is a wet weather's tyres, one of their main functions. But after that, it's a question of being very, very smooth with transferring weight from front to rear. So when you're braking, it's a question of light braking to begin with, and then increasing the pressure on the brake lever to get the front weight over the front tyre, and then once it's dug into the tarmac, you can start braking quite hard. Bikes with ABS, if you're in a straight line, you know, completely upright, it's almost impossible to crash no matter how hard you brake, because the ABS will kick in. But as soon as you start introducing lean, then you're starting to kind of dance on ice, really, a little bit, so to speak. And the same goes on the rear. It's a question of smoothly applying the throttle so you can get the weight to transfer to the rear tyre. And once the suspension and the weight's like sitting on that rear tyre, then you can start to introduce power. And again, if you've got traction control, if you're in a completely straight line, you can lean on the traction control in the wet, even with a tiny bit of lean on the throttle, unlike the front. But again, it's a bit of a dangerous game to play in the wet. If you start leaning on electronics, it's best to sort of do it by feel, build up your speed, and don't push too much. I mean, track days, it's not worth pushing hard anyway. There's no talent scouts out there. It's a question of just having fun and enjoying your bike. So as well as being very, very smooth, as well as kind of having electronics as a backup, you want to keep your bike as upright as you can in the corners. You don't want big lean, you don't want to be trail braking. So do all your work in a straight line when it comes to braking and accelerating. And when it comes to leaning in or coming out, you're being very gentle going in and out the corners. And when you're in the middle of the corner, you want to hang off a long way. You want to keep that bike as upright as you can, so the pressure of the tyre is kind of going downwards that way instead of sideways, where it's easy to slip away, and just kind of feel your way round. You can generally tell how much grip you've got on the front by how easy the bike is to steer. If it starts to get really hard to steer, like a lot of resistance as you start to turn in, your front tyre is probably not gripping, it's probably too cold. And the same with the rear, you know, you can start to feel it with the throttle. I mean, a thing a lot of racers do, something that the Von Haslam school used to talk about, was if you are completely upright, try and make the bike wheel spin when you're going along in a straight line, and you'll get a sense of how much grip there is. You know, quite often you'll probably, with a big bike in a lower gear, you'll end up wheeling and you'll suddenly realize how much grip you have got. But if it does spin, then you realize, you know, you've got to be a little bit careful. I wouldn't kind of ride like that all the time, but it's worth kind of experimenting when you're out on the track down a long straight, where, you know, at the beginning of a straight, so at Donington, you know, when you've come out of Goddard's, as you're starting to go down the straight, you know, give the bike quite a lot of power and see what it does in a straight line, but not with any lean. But that's if you really want to kind of push on, if you're racing and you want to test for grip. I would say in a track day scenario, really err on the side of caution. Be very smooth, and yeah, just be careful. But you can still enjoy it, and also at track days when it's raining, you don't get many people out on the circuit, so you might be in a situation where you've got the whole track to yourself, which is really good as well. But yeah, in terms of road tyres being like 2 seconds apart from a dry time, I'd say that's a little bit too small, so don't push for that. But great question, thank you very much. Next, from Giboian, thanks very much for your question. This, I guess, is about Spa again. That was awesome on-bike footage, real feeling of speed. You mentioned the route that you used. I couldn't get the names of the towns. Could you share, please? No problem. Well, I've had quite a few messages asking the same thing, so I'll put this up on the screen. So let's so this is a route which I first used when we used to go on these tours run by a company called Burn Up. Gary Byrne, I think it was. He had an Aprilia RSV, and it's the first time I ever went to the Nurburgring, and we went via Belgium. We did a nice twisty route on the way there, and then just hot-footed it back via the motorways when we'd had our fun. And it's a route that I've done many times since, with my MCN hat on and with my friends, and I did the same with my girlfriend when I went to Spa in the summer. So the scenic route is this. So if you're only going to Spa, I'll talk about the Spa bit first. So when you come off the Channel Tunnel or the ferry in Calais, you can either hot foot it to St Quentin down the A26 motorway, or you can just take the twisty route, which you can kind of find via any sat nav really. The twisty route basically runs beside the motorway on the way down, and I guess it's about 100 miles. So if you're hot footing it down there, take a few hours. If you're taking your time, you might get to St Quentin about lunchtime. If you're getting off the Channel Tunnel very first thing, 110 miles, and then from there you start to head east. So you're going to head towards La Capelle and Origny, and then you head to Vervins, and then Rozoy. I'm mucking these names up, I'm sure. Then Lony, and then Revin or Revin, when the roads start to get really good. That's the D988, and that's when it starts to kind of get quite you know, you go into forest land, and it's up and down dale, and then you get to a town called Givet, which is where if you take A roads and B roads all the way there, that would take most of the day to get to Givet, and it's right on the border of Belgium and Germany, in the Ardennes, and it's absolutely beautiful. There's a river running through it, and it's a nice place to either have lunch if you've got your tail between your legs, or just have dinner if you've taken it easy. And then if you carry on to the Nurburgring, then you can go from there to Rochefort, then to Jemelle, then to, where are we? Arlon, La Roche-en-Ardenne, and then towards St Vith, Trier, Prüm, Gerolstein, Kelberg, and then Nurburgring. And then around the Nurburgring, you've got the 257 road, the 258 road, and the roads themselves are amazing, even if you can't go on the track anymore, which is a bit of a shame. And then on the way back, the fast way back is to take the 258 to Monschau. And then from Monschau, and the road to there is beautiful as well. You take the road to Eupen in Belgium. It used to be called the road from hell. It used to be one of the most bumpy roads you could find, but it's all been smoothed off now. And once you get to Eupen, then you get on the E40 and you go to Liège, Brussels, Ostend and Calais, all on the motorway. And none of it is toll roads, it's all free. So yeah, that's a really great route to go if you're going to go to Spa, or if you're going to go to the Nurburgring. I mean, I missed the bit out between Givet and Spa, but from Givet to Spa is just pretty straightforward. I just used a map, and he just kind of took us there. It's not actually that far. But yeah, I had a lot of fun on that road, and in the summer the weather's normally pretty hot as well, because it's a little bit inland. But yeah, I hope that helps. Hope anyone who tries that route enjoys it, and let us know how you get on. Thank you very much. Right, let's get rid of that and then go for question number 3 again about the 750. It's from Mick Jixer 3014. Hello Mick. What EBC pads did you settle on? Interested to see if they'd make a difference to my K3. Well, for my GSX-R project, I've been using EBC brake pads for this year anyway. For the road, I've been using FA447HH, which is kind of their road compound pad. At the beginning, I wasn't that impressed, but as time's gone on and they bedded in, and the discs, I had new discs as well, new EBC discs. As everything's bedded in, they've actually become really, really good. And you know, one of the underlying themes, something I always say, is bikes like these without ABS have got much better brake feel and power than even the latest and greatest super bikes with ABS now, because ABS kind of takes the sting out of the feel and power of most brakes, unless it's an M1000RR or a Panigale V4S or something like that. So the brakes on the GSX are really, really good with the EBC brakes, and then even better still with the track compound brakes, which is the GPFAX 447HH. I've used them at Cadwell and Spa. I actually fitted them at Spa, so I didn't wear them out along the way. But they are fantastic. What was one of my GSX-R's weak points, which is the brakes, is now one of the best things about it. You know, having good brakes, it makes such a difference to your riding enjoyment, because you know, you're almost braking as much as you are accelerating, and if that part of the riding experience is a bit numb, then it detracts from the whole pleasure of riding a bike. But if they're really good, then the bikes are a joy to ride, and they give you more confidence, and they just help the handling, and it's a win-win situation. So they're the two kinds of pads I've been using. There is an intermediate pad between road and track that I'd like to try as well, where, you know, maybe that's for a much faster road with the occasional track day. So that is the answer to that one. Thank you very much. Again, GSX-R750 trip from Leon Murray 7488. 10 hours with that tank bag set up sounds truly awful, mate. So when I did this trip, I took quite a lot of stuff with me because I needed all my track day paraphernalia. So I filled a tank bag right up with tools, as well as my trainers and my clothes and stuff, and waterproofs and locks. I had a rucksack as well, so I was pretty fully loaded. But I quite like riding with a track day, with a tank bag, especially on a sports bike, because you can lean against it and it takes the weight off your wrists. So it makes a massive difference when you're doing a pretty kind of big trip. And with the 750 to Spa, I kind of was doing like 10-hour day on the way there, the long route, and then a couple of 5, 6, 7, 8-hour days, and it makes all the difference. Okay, you can't do the full Marquez with it on, but I never thought it got in the way, to be honest. It was kind of a necessary evil, and I'm really glad I took it. Some people have asked why not use a tail pack, but the reasons are the same really. I like the tank bag to lean on, and with the tail pack you really feel the extra weight. You can kind of feel it kind of sitting up high behind you, and you really feel it when you're changing direction. And you can't with the tank bags on the tank, because the weight's more central in the bike, so you don't feel the extra weight. And I'm always a little bit paranoid about a tail bag falling off, and if you've got a rucksack, sometimes the rucksack bumps into the tail pack. So yeah, I love a tank bag, and I don't really think it's a problem on a sports bike, especially at the end of the journey. You're going to be doing a track day, so you can get your rocks off around the track anyway. So that's why I use a tank bag. But thank you very much. Next, you'd be glad to hear, it's another Spa related question from Ben Davis 6775. Spa is on my bucket list too. I'm not surprised, it's an amazing place. Could you explain the sensations and inputs required to negotiate Eau Rouge? Such an awesome corner. How to maintain momentum on a bike while simultaneously achieving change in direction. Do you blip the throttle to help the bike stand up, then roll over the other side, or use more steering input? Yeah, I mean, Eau Rouge is one of the most famous, fearsome corners on any racetrack in the world, this side of a TT. And it takes a while to get used to. On my 750 it's amazing. On my S1000RR race bike, that I've been there a few times, it's absolutely, your eyes are on stalks. So it's basically a big chicane. So you come down a hill, you go left, you go right, and then you go back left again. And it's quite a fast chicane. But the thing that makes it so special is on the entry to the chicane, it's really, really steep downhill and really fast. So on my 750, it's probably over 150 mile an hour. On my race bike, it's probably well over 160. On a super bike or world endurance bike, it's probably close to 180. As you're coming down the hill, you've got to open up the chicane as much as you can. So you need to be as placed on the track as far as you can on the right. But by doing that, you're almost running your shoulder up the old pit wall. So the impression of speed is huge. And then when you come out of the chicane, it's really steep uphill again. But it's a really important part of the track, because as you come out of this chicane, as you wind your way out, you've got a really long uphill straight. So your speed out of Eau Rouge dictates how fast you're going to be at the end of the massive straight that follows kind of a kilometre or so along. So it's a scary corner. It's a corner that's hard work, and it's very important as well. Apart from the entry, which is up against the pit wall, it doesn't feel particularly dangerous. I mean, it's breathtaking because of the speed, but there's loads and loads of runoff there, and Spa have done an amazing job over recent years of making the track safe for bikes, just so they can run world endurance, stuff like that. So, you wouldn't want to fall off anywhere, but there's no particular reason why you should, and there's nothing too close to the track to hit if you get it wrong. So the approach to Eau Rouge is flat out in fourth or fifth, depending on the bike. And then you start to funnel down the hill. You need to start to turn left for the first part of the left bit of the chicane, where you run over the left curb, and you're kind of trail braking and going down a gear. Well, I am anyway. And the act of trail braking and going down a gear is putting the weight on the front of the bike, taking it off the rear to help it steer, reduce the steering angle, helps it go through the left. And then with any chicane, to get the bike, as you sort of allude to there, to get the bike to stand up again, to go to the other side, you can give it a little bit of throttle, not blipping the throttle, but just introduce a little bit of throttle to get it to stand up, to get it over to the other side, which in this case is the right. For example, the chicane at the Foggy S's at Donington is a left-right. You go in off the throttle on the left, and then when you're ready to turn right, then you pick the throttle up again, and it helps the bike come up and over, and then you've got your line out. So a little bit of throttle does help the bike pick up, and then conversely, when you're off the throttle, the bike's really easy to turn, which is why we always talk about off throttle turning. Off the throttle, the bike just wants to go down. On the throttle, it wants to go up. So yeah, you've got to be really kind of accurate through Eau Rouge, because on the way up, you need to carry a lot of speed through the right part of the track. And then as the track turns left, as the track goes left, it starts to crest the hill. And if you're on a bike like my 750, which has kind of got road suspension, is quite soft, as you've got so much throttle on and accelerating hard, there's a lot of weight off the front wheel, so the bike will start to weave as it goes up and over the hill back to the left again. You can kind of dial that out with more support from the rear suspension, and it doesn't do that on my race bike. It does it on the road bike. And then you go right again and then down the straight, and you can actually find more speed by staying leant over for longer than you think, because the smaller diameter of the tyre on the edge gears the bike down. It gives it more acceleration. It helps it leap down the straights rather than staying upright, and the tyre's bigger and there's less acceleration. So there's a lot going on at Eau Rouge, and then, you know, add to that the kind of the atmosphere of the place, the drama of the place, the bright red and yellow curbs. It's just amazing. So yeah, but it's also a wrench. You know, you've got to do a lot of counter steering to get from left to begin with, and then right, and then left, and then right again. So yeah, you've got to absolutely push and pull the bars for all you're worth. You've got to throw your weight from right to left to right. You've got to use pressure through your foot pegs. So to get through there really, really quick, you've really got to wrestle the bike. Even my 750, which is a bit of a pussycat, but it's really, really rewarding. And you know, if it's on your bucket list, then it's one of those things you'll remember forever. It's not the best corner on the track, I don't think. Every single corner's a winner there. But the best corners, Blanchimont 1 and 2, some real fast left-handers, which are kind of taken flat out in 4th or 5th gear, knee down, between 150 and 160, 70 mile an hour. That's amazing. I can't wait to go back, but thanks very much for your question. Next, from the incredible Sulk 5543, thank you very much for your question. Again, 750 at Spa. The bike, the track, the sound, all epic. Very lucky with that dodgy van driver. Can I ask, if you didn't have the track element to this trip, would you still love the GSX-R as a tourer? Good question. You've got a GSX-R in your profile picture thing as well. So, fellow GSX-R owner. Yeah, I had a van come towards me on the way there. It was on the video, where it was just a classic mobile phone kind of near miss, because he's obviously on his phone, didn't see the bend coming up, and he was going around a right-hander, went all the way over to the left as I was coming the other way, and luckily I avoided him, but no harm done. As to whether I'd have enjoyed my 750 if there was no track element, that's a really interesting question. So I've done loads of touring on 750s before, and sports bikes, just all around Europe, you know, no problem at all. And the GSX-R750 is not a bad long distance bike. It's relatively roomy, the bars aren't too extreme, it's pretty comfortable actually. The only reason I found my bike uncomfortable, as I said on the video, I had so much weight on my back, on the rucksack, it's kind of forcing me into the seat. It wasn't as comfortable as it could have been. But I think with no track element now, is not the bike I would just take on a tour. I wouldn't choose to take a sports bike just down to south of France or whatever, just for the hell of it. I'd much rather go on a super naked. If I had to, I wouldn't complain. But if I had the choice of bikes to do long distance on and big mileage, it'd be a super naked. And I've said before, the Super Duke 1390 that I had is probably the perfect all-rounder, because you could take it on track, blast through B roads, do skids and wheelies, and it was really comfortable. Still one of the most comfortable bikes I've ever ridden, with the comfort seat. So yeah, so I wouldn't choose to take my GSX-R touring, but because I had the carrot dangling at the end of the trip, I was happy to do it. And I might do it again. I wouldn't mind doing another European track day next year. I'd love to do Spa again, but I've ticked that box. I'd like to do maybe something in Italy, maybe a Mugello or a Misano, something like that. Thanks very much for your question. Next is from, right, a little bit of a change of pace now. These next couple are to do with kind of perceptions that road tests are kind of influenced by manufacturers, or that we don't tell the truth about bikes, or we miss things out. It's quite a common occurring kind of question, but we'll dive in with these two. This one's from Bojin Perko. Thanks very much. I used to be a car journalist. Feels like a lifetime ago now. And the number one unwritten rule was that the amount of uncomfortable truths you can write about a car is inversely proportional to the amount of advertising revenue the magazine gets from said car's producer. I can only guess that it's the same for motorcycles. If someone allows you to frolic around with their expensive product and pays your employer lots of money, out of which comes your salary as well, you better be careful. I believe any reviews for products that are too expensive to buy for review this way. And don't even get me started about influencers, also known as paid shills. Right, well, that's quite a common perception, but completely untrue in terms of everything that I see from myself and my peers in the motorcycle, UK motorcycle media. You know, and I'm talking about myself, MCN, whether it's Fast Bikes, 44 Teeth, Bike Magazine, all the usual suspects when it comes to print, web, you know, Bennett's, and video and YouTube. There's, you know, when manufacturers put on these launches, they're not doing it to entertain us. They're doing it to promote their product, and they want to show their product in the best light. All bikes come out during winter, so as nice as it would be not to have to travel anywhere and just have a bike on your doorstep in the UK, you know, if a new Fireblade was launched, there's absolutely no point riding it around a wet roundabout in Peterborough in January. You know, you've got to have an environment where you can test the bikes properly. And also, you know, when people watch YouTube videos, read magazines, it's aspirational. You want to see a bike looking glorious. You want to see the bike looking fun and exciting, and that's part of it as well. There's no pressure that's put on us regarding advertising. I've never ever, I mean, bad reviews are few and far between anyway, but there's a lot of criticism in most road tests. You know, running themes are ABS isn't very good on bikes sometimes, fueling isn't very good on bikes sometimes wind protection, the way dashes work, the way suspension works, the way OE tyres work. I mean, there's a lot of criticism in road tests. They're not all strawberries and cream, that's for sure. Manufacturers very rarely even comment on a bad review, which in a way upsets me a little bit, because you think, well, surely you'd want to know why we've said something critical about it. But that's by the by. So, you know, that is certainly not true, what you say about, you know, the uncomfortable truths being proportional to the amount of advertising revenue. 100% not. No one's ever threatened to pull advertising from MCN. I'm sure that my colleagues in the MCN advertising department have had some uncomfortable meetings with dealers over the years where they're trying to sell them some advertising space in MCN to a dealer whose bike that we've just criticised. But, you know, that's all part of it. We're the journalists, we're there for the reader and the viewer. You know, every time I ride a bike, I think about a friend asking me, is this bike any good? Shall I spend my money on it? And I wouldn't want to see them wasting their money, and I wouldn't want to see any readers or viewers wasting their money. So, you know, and it's just an opinion, the road test, whether it's right or wrong, whether you agree with us or not. You know, we're just being as truthful as we can, given the information that we've got on the day, given the ride we've got on the day, given the people we've spoken to at the launch and everything in between. The only time I've been given any kind of grief for criticising something was over 20 years ago. There was a big group test that we did on a Spanish track, and there was control tyres, and it was pretty universal that none of us really got on with the control tyres. They didn't have a lot of grip, and they weren't really working on any of the bikes we were on. So, you know, we kind of criticised the tyre. The tyre company's response was, well, it must have been the track. You know, it can't have been the tyres. It must have been some other things. You know, everyone probably knew it was the tyres. You could feel it's the tyres. all the people with a lot of experience said the same thing. It was the same on every bike and everything in between. And you know, at previous tests or whatever around that track, the track's normally pretty grippy. We had quite a lot of comeback for that test. People weren't happy, but we managed to justify what we said. And although they didn't go away happy, they kind of went away satisfied that we'd done a good job. But apart from that, that's the closest I've ever come to having any real stick from a manufacturer for criticising anything. And yeah, that's our job, to be critics. You know, I'm not sure how the influencer world really works. I mean, I know for a fact that some influencers, not necessarily the kind of ones that are closer to the journalists now, some kind of more influencers more for kind of the people that appeal to sort of the wider audience, not just bikers. So I know that some of them get paid for some motorcycle content. So I guess like with anything, you know, when you're reading a review, you've got to kind of do your research. You've got to know if you trust that publication, that person, you know, where they're coming from, what their angle is, and everything in between. But definitely don't get influenced by manufacturers when we do tests. I mean, in a kind of in a small way, you kind of want things to be criticised because it's more interesting. Just saying everything's brilliant is a bit boring, isn't it? But no, there aren't many bad bikes out there. So I mean, I've literally just read a comment on the Bimotor video that MCN has just done saying, no, I haven't criticised it. Well, I have. I said that the brakes are a bit wooden and it's very expensive. But apart from that, there's nothing to criticise. So, you know, sometimes bikes are just brilliant. Anyway, thank you very much for that. We've got another similar one from Giancarlo Benzina. Thanks very much. So this carries on from another thread. It's true, and it's true that the ones that claim it isn't. And even if it isn't not a direct cause connection, you'll never survive as a tester when you're brutally honest on your bike tests. And on the influential marketing conferences, motions pushed, so you won't get an invite anymore. Without hate, just not listed. No test what? Old stuff. So of course it's connected and it's happening. Brand promoters are pushed by the manufacturers, not brand real talkers. Probably a little bit of a language barrier there, but no, despite everything, we get invited on launches, and I've never known anyone to be banned from a launch because they've said terrible things about a bike. Yeah, it's just a bit of a conspiracy theory, really. But these comments come up every now and then, so I thought it's good to address it. But thanks very much for all your questions. Right, on another different tack now. This is from Gingerpunk2. Leavesy, my dude, just wanted to bump an older question of mine. Sorry I don't get around to everybody's. They're on the list. Just a question of getting to them. I will do one day. As it kind of ties into some of these ones today, and that's regarding grabbing a thumb brake or a scooter brake for my track bike in order to learn how to use it correctly and with more feel and finesse, as my foot is rubbish and acts like an on-off switch, and no matter how much I try to finesse it, I just can't manage it. So is there a major benefit to a thumb scooter brake in this regard, or do you have any magic advice that may save me the cash and give me a light bulb rear brake moment? This is track only, as I use my rear on the road for slower stuff and when in tight corners at a slow, etc. Really glad this series is going strong, and I hope the YouTube algorithms and nasty behind the scenes stuff isn't impacting your viewer data. Once again, Bud. Cheers once again, Bud. Graham. Thanks, Graham. I think the YouTube algorithms, who can understand them? I mean, I don't know how they go. I don't know if they like this channel or not, but let's hope so. So this is all about the rear brake, using the rear brake. It's really useful. We've spoken about the person in the last video didn't think it was, but I think the general consensus is a very useful thing, especially in racing now. And obviously you use it on the road, so you know how good it is. And it is hard to use it on track. You you know, if you're not used to using it, there's a lot going on when you're riding anyway, and having the brain power to start to drag the back brake as well can be difficult. There's a lack of finesse, as you say, because you've got a big boot on your rear brake lever, so it's difficult to finesse it compared to how you can finesse the front brake when you're trailing the brake into a corner. And it can be difficult to reach. So if you're going through a right-hander, if you've got your tiptoes on the pegs, you can't reach the back brake. And if you're fully leant over on the left-hander, sometimes you can't reach the back brake either. So, you know, there's a lot of kind of barriers to using the back brake. I kind of went through the same thought process as you in the, I suppose, kind of in the mid 2010s when I was racing my S1000RR. I really wanted to use my back brake more, and I tried. There was no scooter brakes then. That's kind of quite a recent thing in GPs and World Superbikes, where there's an actual proper finger brake lever on the left bar in a conventional place, and then the clutch lever is kind of moved up in the air for the riders to use off the start, and once they use it off the start they don't need to use it again. And that's one of the things I like about a scooter. You can use your hands on your brakes, you don't need to use your feet. Thumb brakes, like for general consumption, were in their infancy then, and I tried a couple. We tried to make some homemade ones which kind of worked a little bit, but the problem I found then was having enough brake pressure with your thumb to have any kind of effect on the rear brake, so that was difficult. It always kind of seemed to be in the way of the bar. As I say, it wasn't evolved then. I'm sure they're better now. And sometimes I couldn't reach it. So if I was through a left-hander and you got all your weight forward on the bike, it was hard to kind of contort your thumb to get into the lever. And then again, when I was hanging off the other side, I couldn't reach it with my thumb either. So I kind of gave up with it in the end and went back to a normal foot brake. You'll see that on a lot of Grand Prix bikes and World Superbikes that have thumb brakes, they've got a foot brake as well. So they probably use a combination of both. When they can reach the thumb brake, they'll use it, and when they can reach the foot brake, they'll use it. As for my advice of what you should do, I would say persevere with your foot brake. You know, thumb brake's such a faff. You know, road bikes aren't designed to have them. It's trying to find something to fit them. Unless they've evolved now. It'd be interesting to hear if there are any good thumb brakes out there. But I wondered if you'd have the same problems in terms of trying to reach it. But my advice to you with regard to using the rear brake with your foot is, like anything when you're learning a new skill, is maybe just do a few sessions of a track day where you knock it back 20%, and so you can really think about what you're doing with the brake. You know, one of the best things about it is to give it a bit of back brake before you do your front brake, so you don't really need a lot of finesse there, and you're sitting, you know, straight upright on the bike, so it's quite easy to reach. Then you start to bleed it off as you go into the corner anyway, so you don't kind of need much in the way of finesse. You can dab the back brake to keep the bike tighter in its line if you go a little bit wide. And then on a super bike, you'd use the back brake to stop the bike wheeling, which again, you don't need masses of finesse for. You know, you can actually put a lot of pressure on the back brake without it skidding. And you don't want to be hard on the back brake when you're really hard on the front anyway, because it will skid because all the weight's over the front. And you can also maybe move the back brake lever down so it's not as sharp, so you need more travel to get it to work, and so the bite's a little bit lower. That might help you. But yeah, it's definitely, once you cracked it, it's a really useful tool, especially in the wet as well, which I should have mentioned with the wet weather tyre thing at the beginning. But great question, thank you very much. Right, how many of these have we got left? Right, we've got a few still. Thanks for bearing with us. This is from Moto Daxa. And easy, I'm looking at racing on the big track next year, but our club Supersport rules haven't quite updated to allow the 750 inline 4 yet. Do you think the 600 version of this bike is still King Richard, or is it a significant enough of a step down from a 750 that I'd be better off with one of the other big 4 600s? I've tried the other three and I like the front end of the R6, but most of CBR feels the most docile and easy to ride. Should I even consider an 800cc triple or 955cc twin, KTM or Ducati? Interesting. So yeah, with Supersport racing, it's always been traditionally inline 4 600s and 3-cylinder 675s. You've got these new Evo rules or new generation rules that have come into Supersport recently at kind of a national level, some club racing now, where you can have 754s, 950 twins, I'm not sure exactly what the twins are, and bigger triples, because you've got the 765 and the F3 800 racing now. But to be able to run those, you need some kind of balancing rules. So, you know, with and they're normally done with ECUs. So you'd need to buy a race ECU to make your bike make the same power as all the other bikes on the grid, which I would have thought in club racing is quite sophisticated thing to do, because they're not cheap. You know, I think they're thousands and thousands of pounds at British Supersport level, to basically making your bike slower. But in terms of the actual 600s with club racing, what I would say is when you see somebody at the sharp end of a club race, 9 times out of 10 it's them, not the bike. They could probably win on any bike, because the depth of field in a club race isn't as deep as it would be a national level, where the times are all within a second or two. You know, at British Supersport, the depth of field is really, really rich, whereas at club level it probably starts to fizzle out once you've gone past 15th place or something like that. So the reason I say that is don't necessarily get the bike that the winners get in, because it might not necessarily be the bike that's doing it. Conversely, if you're that good, you could just jump on a GSX-R600 and win. So what I'd say is one of two things. Either look at what most people have got on the grid and are doing well at. So if that's they're generally R6s, ZX6s and Daytonas. You know, you're not, if you want to do well at club racing, you'll be wise to go down that route. You know that they're competitive bikes, and also there'll be a lot of information out there with regard to setup and tuning and that kind of stuff. So, you know, you can get yourself a pretty competitive bike quite easily. The GSX-R600, in my experience, as a race bike, has never been as popular. I'm not exactly sure why. As a road bike, they're brilliant. The latest generation, it got more updates to its engine than the 750. It got a close ratio gearbox, loads of internal changes for the engine. And in fact, it's so good that if you stuck a 750 badge on the latest 600, you'd be hard pushed to tell the difference. It's got loads of grunt. It's not like a Revy 600. It's got a surprising amount of grunt. Whether it would make a club race winning race bike, I'm not sure. But if you want to ride a GSX-R600 and you just want to ride it and enjoy it, go for that. So I'd say if you want to go for enjoyment, get the bike you want. If you want to do really, really well, kind of follow the crowd a little bit. And if you are absolutely the next Marquez, you'll win on the GSX-R600 anyway. As to, you know, which of those other kind of bigger Supersport bikes you should get, you know, I would kind of avoid that club level, because you don't need to spend a lot of money to make it competitive. You need to, like, an expensive ECU and whatever else, unless you have to do that at your club. But I'm not sure how many clubs actually do that. But great question. Thank you very much. Next, from Andy Armstrong, 81, tyre question. No problem. Thanks for your question. Ducati Panigale V4 SP2. Very nice. Mostly used on track, mid-inters level, occasional commuting and Sunday rides. In 2025, over 80% of track time was wet. Some of them triple wet, including Portimao, not just Silverstone and Donington. During the winter service, I'm tempted to go for Pirelli Rosso 4 courses instead of the stock Supercourse or SPs. Will I notice any loss of tyre performance if I see a dry track again? I like not having the hassle of tyre warmers and the ability to enjoy the track whatever the weather. I suspect I'm at the limitation of my lap time, not tyres. Thoughts? Good question, Andy. I would say that is a great choice of tyre. I've used that on my 750, on my KTM last year. They're surprisingly good in the wet. They last a good amount of time, especially on the edges. Super coursers, because they're so grippy, you can just destroy the edges in a day. Whereas the Rosso coursers are much more durable. You don't need tyre warmers. They warm up quick. So I would say they would do everything you want out of a tyre. But obviously you can't have your cake and eat it. In terms of being good in the wet around a track, like I said earlier, they're still very, very sporty tyres. So if you had a cold, wet track day, they're not going to do much in the way of grip. You need kind of a lower level tyre. So I suppose you have to go out, don't you? Because if you just spent all that money to go to Portimao, you want a little bit of track time. So you're gonna go out. If you're in England, I wouldn't go out because it'll cost a lot more to damage a repair a damaged bike anyway. The only place the Rosso 4 coursers would struggle would be in perfect conditions. So we actually did the launch of the Rosso 4 courser at Mugello, and we had loads of super bikes, including the Panigale, and they were fantastic. Front tyres amazing, loads and loads of grip. But the Panigale is quite an aggressive bike with a lot of power, and it is quite easy to overcome the rear tyre grip if you're really on it, if it's a really hot day and you're doing lots and lots of laps. So there's going to be a small compromise there. But for the rest of the time, I'd say it's a really good choice. Fantastic on the road, like I say, and they'll last a long time as well. So, unless you're absolutely hammering for the best lap time on a track day, then they're going to be the tyre for you. But if you're not, you need to go down the Supercorsa route. But they're going to be, if you go to Supercorsa SPs, you don't need tyre warmers. The performance of them is almost the same as a race tyre, but they're just not going to be quite as grippy in normal conditions on the road or in the wet. And I think a Panigale would destroy the side of those tyres in no time. But not a bad problem to have, is it? But thanks very, very much. Next, how many we got? Oh, 2 more. Thanks for hanging in there. This is from GRR82. Hi Nevezy, with the sheer amount of experience you have on new bikes, do new bikes ever blow you away anymore? If so, does it happen with less frequency? Good question. Well, I ride every single day. We ride new bikes all the time. Of course, there are loads of bikes out there which are just endlessly impressive. Just amazing bikes, Most of the Ducati range, Panigales, Multistradas are amazing. KTMs are fantastic. Honda's new generation of bikes, Hornets and Fireblades are brilliant. My GSX-R750, R1 Yamahas, Aprilias, just the biking. We're so lucky. We just got so many great bikes. To be honest, recent years nothing's really blown me away in the way that you would imagine. So this time last year we got to ride the new V4S at Vallelunga, Panigale, and that was amazing. But it didn't blow me away because I knew what I was going to expect. I knew it was going to be brilliant. I knew the speed would be just out of this world. I knew the technology would be amazing. But the bikes that blow me away now, the ones that take me by surprise, the ones that you kind of approach and you think, well, this will be okay, but absolutely wows you. And generally they're the smaller, cheaper bikes. I've said before, things like the Fantic Caballero Scrambler 500 blew me away because I couldn't believe how much fun it was, how great value it is, all the nice parts on it. It's a wheelie bike, which I wasn't expecting. So that blew me away. The Honda GB350S blew me away. There's a budget single bike with hardly any horsepower that barely does 80 miles an hour, but it was just amazing because it's so cheap and it just makes you feel good. Little electric bikes, there's a Honda CUVE, something like that. Scooter, basically, electric, loved it. Maving electric bike, loved it. So all of these little gems pop out the woodwork, and that's what keeps me interested, really. It's the little surprises that kind of come out, which most people wouldn't even register on people's radar. You know, understandably, people are wowed by the big power and the impressive specs and everything in between, but I just love the surprises. So, and that keeps me going. And every bike, I enjoy riding every bike. Every bike's got its own personality, whether good or bad. But yeah, so they still blow me away, fortunately. But thanks very much for your question. And finally, from Super Davey YouTube, this is talking about my original "What Makes This Bike Great" video for the T-Max. Unwatchable with that crap intrusive music. Why TF do YouTubers insist on inflicting your music choices on us viewers? It adds nothing but a buggeration. Thanks very much for your comment, more than question. So the beginning of that T-Max video, I decided it might be a bit of fun to do a little bit of time-lapse video of me going to work down the A1. And at the A1 at the moment, there's huge traffic jams. It's been there for over a year, where there's a contraflow. And I think I filtered the whole way, like 10 miles, and I sped it up and it looked really good. But then you have to choose some music going over it, because if you speed up a bit of film, you've got 2-3 minutes of just like squeaky, Pinky and Perky music. There's an old reference for everyone. So you kind of have to put music over it, and it's very divisive music, as proved by your good self. You know, what do you put on there? You cannot please everybody. It's impossible when it comes to music. So all you can do is satisfy yourself. Because if I tried to guess what music you liked, A, I probably wouldn't manage it, and B, it would upset someone else. So, you know, these videos, I really enjoy making them. They're just an amazing hobby that I enjoy. I enjoy riding the bikes I get to ride, meeting the people I get to meet. I enjoy the whole process of filming and editing and choosing music as well. So I decided to put some techno on there. And, you know, I love dance music. You know, my love of dance music has allowed me to meet some amazing people around the world as well. So yeah, I put a bit of that on. So it's a choice of putting music on there or doing nothing. Sometimes, I mean, I've got a bit of criticism from T-Max video again, the one I did at Cadwell, about the music at the end. Again, I wanted to do some time-lapse stuff, just make the film speed up. I put the same techno track on it. Maybe it's techno that winds people up. But also with that video, I had nowhere to put the cameras. So the onboard stuff's not very good because the bike hasn't got a fuel tank. You're not allowed to put cameras on your body or, you know, obstructing anything. So yeah, the camera wasn't very good, and I almost scrapped the video, but I thought the story was good enough to hold up, you know, and the fact that the footage wasn't as good as it could have been. So that's kind of, that's, and also with some of this onboard footage, you get a lot of wind noise. Sometimes you've got no choice but to cover up footage with music, whether it be wind noise, whether it be, you know, a clip is so long that there's only so much talking you can put over it. There's lots of reasons why you have to use music, and music's used in all TV and films and YouTubes and everything in between. And yeah, it's always going to be divisive. The only thing that hasn't been divisive, it's quite interesting, my other love, drumming. I've put some drum tracks on some of my videos where I needed some kind of background music to fill over, say, lots of clips of bikes at bike meetings which I've done, or onboard stuff that goes on quite a long time, and you don't want to shorten it down because you want to show somebody the journey of a bike and you can't talk over all of it, so you need some kind of music. And also just having bike noise, that would be ideal, wouldn't it, if you're on a racetrack, say. But if you're just going down a road at 50 miles an hour looking after the speed limit, a bike's just going to drone along, isn't it? It's not going to be very interesting. So Unfortunately, I know exactly what you mean with music, because there's a lot of stuff I watch and I hate the music. But yeah, what do you do? What do you do? But thanks for your comment. You know, all these critiques, I've got to say that on my channel, the critiques are very few and far between, and normally quite kind, unlike MCN, where people really put the boot in. But either way, there's, you know, some people are completely unreasonable, but, you know, if there's a grain of kind of truth in what people are saying, I always take it on board and try and use it to improve things as I go along. But yeah, I'm not offended. Thanks very much for your comment. Thanks very much for getting through this video. It was a longie, this one. Next week is a video called Race Report, where I ride a really cool race bike that I've always wanted to ride. And I've got some cracking what makes this bike great videos coming up as well soon. So hope you enjoy those. Thanks for watching this one, and I'll see you soon.